I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
Duluth police are working with the community to get a handle on drug-related crime. The police chief is here to talk about the scourge of opioid addiction.
The CN Duluth Intermodal Terminal saw the first of what is predicted to be many shipments this week in what could be a real economic boon for the region.
And we'll have the week's business headlines and bring you a news file story from 25 years ago.
Don't go away, Almanac North is next. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. This week's show is recorded on Wednesday, so the WDSE crew can prepare for our broadcast of the Duluth Superior Symphony on Saturday, which should be a good one.
Should be.
We'll have more on that later, but now here's Denny with our first topic.
Thank you very much, Julie. Welcome, everybody. A troubling increase in opioid-related drug overdoses in northeastern Minnesota is putting a real strain on first responders. St. Louis County in particular has been hard hit by drug addiction and drug trafficking. In Duluth, police are kept busy responding to drug-related crimes and the human toll of drug addiction. Joining us now with the latest on this issue is Mike Tusken, Chief of Police of the Duluth Police Department. Chief, thanks for being here. Just how big a drug problem do we have in our area?
Well, it's very significant, Denny. We have overdoses, on average about 15 overdoses calls that will come in a quarter, in a 3-month period. So with those overdoses, we have certainly an emergency response, but there's a tremendous toll that it takes on families as well in our area.
Of course, the topic that everyone has been talking about lately has been the heroin epidemic. Where is heroin coming from? How does it find its way to Duluth?
It originates, the manufacturing is typically out of Mexico. And it usually is coming here from a pipeline through major metropolitan cities. And that's a number of them from the Midwest.
Is it coming up I-35 then?
It can come up I-35, absolutely. It can come over from Wisconsin. It can come up from Chicago, Detroit.
And what about once it gets here? Are there people in place to deal it, distribute it? Are there gangs that have kind of set up ownership of the drug trade in the community? What's the situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is a network of dealers that are in major cities that will send people up sometimes through public transportation, buses. Other times it'll be just coming up the highway in motor vehicles. And then they usually have a home base or some connection here where they will set up in a home and deal out of a home. Sometimes it's a hotel.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the means that the dealing happens at.
Chief, police officers and other first responders have saved lives of people who are caught in an overdose when you get on the scene. Tell us about that.
Yeah, last April I started an initiative for our department to have every officer have the ability to have Narcan. It's an antidote for those who are impacted through overdose of opioids. Originally I thought maybe we would have one save. It turns out that we have 14 people today that are alive that probably wouldn't have been. Our officers are there on the scene and able to administer the antidote to reverse the effects temporarily of someone who is having respiratory distress related to using heroin.
Of course, the heroin wouldn't be coming our way if there wasn't an appetite and a market for it.
Absolutely.
Locally. What do you see as feeding that epidemic? Is it something new that's happening in our community that is welcoming heroin?
Well, to answer your question, Julie, it really goes back to the medical community. And I tell the story that when I had knee surgery 15 years ago, I got Tylenol with codeine. When I had a second knee surgery more recently, I was prescribed Loratab. So the medical community for years were trying to alleviate people from having any type of pain. And as a result, the pharmaceutical industries responded by making stronger and stronger painkillers. What the cost of that is that some people are prone to be psychologically and physically dependent on these opioids and get dependency rather quickly. So you created an environment where we have terribly sick, addicted people, and a lot of it started with the medical community. Heroin is a very similar molecular makeup of oxycodone, Loratab, of those opioids
Very
that are prescribed.
powerful drugs. And I would suspect, Chief, too, that a lot of people, once they've taken their pain pills, keep the extras, the leftovers, in their medicine cabinets.
Correct.
Not a good idea, is it?
Not a good idea. Yeah, so you may have these kids, our kids know that in the schools, they know what oxycodone is, they know what Loratab is. It's an opportunity for maybe a kid to take that and give it to somebody at school. Laying around, you may be a victim of a burglary where somebody comes in and steals your medications. So the best action you can take is when you're done with a prescription. For instance, the Duluth Police Department has a place where you can do a safe deposit and drop off of unused medication.
Has the police department worked with the medical community to maybe prescribe less or these drugs less often or
Right.
fewer in a prescription?
Yeah, great question. So 5-7 years ago, we saw this train kind of coming down the tracks. Substantial use of prescribed opioids. And the business practices from physicians has drastically changed. It is not easy to get opioids from your physician, or one of the common tactics that used to be used 5 years ago was to report that you were a victim of a burglary or something, and you'd get a police number saying that your house was burglarized and they took your prescription. That would allow you then to go back to the doctor and re-up on your pills. And so we don't see that anymore, though we used to get tons of calls that just as I described, that people are reporting stolen prescriptions.
And arresting abusers of the drugs, that's not a real cure to the drug problem, is it?
Absolutely not. That's a great question. 1971, Richard Nixon started a war on drugs, where in 2017 we still have all the same issues. You can never arrest your way out of a drug problem. It's really a three-legged stool. You have to have enforcement, certainly, and you have to have education, and you have to also have treatment. And one of the reasons we're suffering in this community is we don't have enough treatment options. For
What is the
people to get help.
treatment for opioid addiction?
Well, you can, there's methadone clinics, but there certainly is, just like any inpatient or outpatient treatment, you don't have the available space. Right now, if somebody comes in and tells me that they want to get treatment, it's 2, 3, 4 weeks out till they can actually get help when they're most vulnerable. They can't get the help they need in our community.
Earlier this year, there was a rash of shootings. Is that related to the drug issue in town? Are you seeing more violent crime because of the influx of drugs into the community?
That's a question I get frequently, especially since January, February. Those shootings were all for different reasons. Some of them were about relationship issues. Some of them were about marijuana was certainly involved in one of them. But there is not a common denominator in these shootings that I can say or point to that is driven through opioids or heroin. That's kind of that is the narrative that you're hearing, but that's not certainly backed up by fact.
The Drug and Violent Crimes Task Force have merged. What does that do for your investigative powers?
It's a tremendous resource. So our task force has 14 people that are working around the clock on trying to rid the streets of these poisons. That's a pretty substantial force multiplier. We have 9 of those investigators. We also partner with the Sheriff's Department, with Superior Police Department, with our federal partners, the DEA and the ATF as well. So we have the ability to have really the full reach of local, state, and federal resources to attack this problem.
And do you find that the problem is moving from Duluth out into the rural areas in northern Minnesota?
It is. It absolutely is impacting communities in Carleton, up in Lake County, certainly as far as up into Ely as well. So the merger of that task force allows us now to have literally all of St. Louis County, we have the ability to do drug investigations.
You mentioned schools a while back that students know that they can maybe raid their parents' prescription cabinets and bring pills in. Are you also seeing heroin in our high schools?
We're not seeing heroin use, and I'm not to say that it's not there. We have seen some incidents of individuals. We haven't seen it on a grand scale, and that's great. But we have to do a better job of educating our kids as well. One of the reasons that I have brought back, just recently have 2 graduates of the DARE program, to reinstitute that here in our organization, in our schools, so that we can prevent future generations from going down this road of addiction that is really, really terribly difficult to
You bring up a good point. A private company will be using dogs to search Duluth schools for contraband. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a great program where these dogs will detect explosives, they'll detect drugs, different drugs, and we have provided that service in the past to the district. But with our scheduling, we can only do it at best 2 or 3 times a year.
Sure.
The frequency that they have by outsourcing, going with this private company, they're able to do that much more frequently. And I applaud any effort we can employ to keep our kids safe in their schools.
Any insights into signs that people can watch for, either that somebody that they know is involved in heroin or some of these harder drugs, or that there is dealing going on in their neighborhood, things that might be helpful to you from the community?
That's a great question. In your neighborhood, oftentimes what we see most associated with is short-term traffic. So somebody who has cars pulling up, people coming in and out, short-term traffic and back out again. We want to have our citizens engage and see something, say something. Give us a call. There's no bad call you can make. We'd rather investigate and make sure that there's nothing, no criminal activity afoot.
And what about use? Signs that people could be watching?
Well, signs of use is different for different chemicals. For heroin, you can have certainly dazed appearances. You can have people that have aberrant behavior. You might notice
any paraphernalia that might be laying around the house that people should be looking
obviously,
for?
most commonly it is injected, so you'll see hypodermic needles, spoons, heating devices as well.
All right, thank you very much. Duluth Police Chief Mike Tusken, thanks for being here, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
For 2 years, employees of the James River Corporation in Ashland have been working under a dark cloud of uncertainty. The recycled paper mill has been on the auction block as part of a corporate restructuring plan. But the employees and management decided they wouldn't take the threat lying down.
The last couple of years, you know, you're kind of down in the dumps, you know, wondering, I mean, myself, I got 25 years in here, and I was really concerned, you know, what am I going to do at this stage in my life? But right now, I feel real good about it, real good.
And so after a lot of hard work, the mill has a new life, and $10 million of new equipment and training on the way. The upgrade plan is partly funded by a $1.1 million package from the state. Over the next 5 years, James River will be able to expand their recycling capabilities in several areas. Some of you may wonder how workers managed to save their jobs from certain death and managed to get a multi-million-dollar facelift out of the deal, too. Patty Himaleski put it best.
And we just kept working very hard, even though the uncertainty was there. We kept our production up, we showed them that we could do it, and we have.
Those involved with the plan say the upgrading of machinery and worker skills will help the mill keep up with the growing demand for recycled products, and in the meantime, save over 200 jobs for this community. In Ashland, Kathy Evangelista, KDLH News.
The Duluth Seaway Port Authority this week unwrapped a new rail-served intermodal container facility in the Twin Ports. The Duluth facility is a partnership between the Port Authority and Lake Superior Warehousing, or Duluth Cargo Connect, and CN Rail. CN plans to use the facility as part of its network, avoiding congestion in larger urban centers. Officials believe the container facility could be a big boost to the region's economy. And joining us now with more is Jonathan Lamb, president of Lake Superior Warehousing, part of Duluth Cargo Connect. Thank you for coming in, Jonathan. Earlier this week, you were quoted as saying that this might be the biggest thing for the port since the opening of the St. Lawrence Seaway. Wow.
I did say that. I did say that,
Yeah.
and that was a bold statement, but I believe it, and I think those of us down at the port, we definitely believe it. And for those that understand logistics and are involved in logistics, really, we're already a facility that handles cargo ships, we handle truck, we handle rail cars, but what we don't handle in our port right now are containers. And so it's almost like adding a whole new mode of transportation for business in our region.
John, what are intermodal containers?
Good question. So if you see photos or pictures of those huge vessels out on the ocean that have all sorts of boxes stacked on top of them, those are called, that's what a container is. And they come in different sizes. There's 20-footers, there's 40-foot lengths, there's other sizes, but they came about in the 1950s, around the same time the St. Lawrence Seaway was being formed. And what containers did is they made it more efficient for shippers to ship their freight because they could put it inside that box. A crane could put it on a ship, they could take it off of a ship, put it on a rail car, and then take it and put it on a truck, just like it's a semi-trailer, without having to handle the product inside. So you eliminated all the handling of what's inside the container itself. It's a much more efficient way to move freight.
So do you envision then these large container ships coming and visiting the Twin Ports anytime soon?
That's a good question, and it's something that we have always worked on and always been interested in, is to get container service on the Great Lakes. The challenges that we have with containers on the Great Lakes, most of the vessels globally that handle containers tend to be so large that they won't fit in the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway system. They won't fit through the locks. And so you'd have to do a transfer to smaller vessels to be able to do that. Another challenge we have with container freight is generally those shippers like to travel or ship their cargo 12 months out of the year. We know the St. Lawrence Seaway closes 3 months out of the year. So you end up having a couple of different tiers of transportation plans you have to have for customers. And frankly, the railroads are quite efficient in how they move containers inland. And so from that perspective, while we always certainly hope we'll have the opportunity to move containers by water, rail is our best solution to also be able to access Asian and South American markets here
So
as well.
since they can't come here by ship right now, you mentioned rail. Tell us a little bit about how they get here and how they leave here.
Well, let's take an example of containers that are on their way to us right now. Someone booked containers to come into our marketplace on an import from Asia. They get loaded on a ship in China, for example, or it might be Japan, might be Indonesia. That ship will bring them into either Vancouver or Prince Rupert in Western Canada. They come off the ship, they go onto a train. A train brings them all the way across North America to us. And then once that container arrives at our facility here in Duluth, we take that container off, and that container goes either on a truck out to that customer's factory, or we might take the product right out of the container and warehouse it for them until they're ready to receive their product.
So even though you're basically a shipping port with lake and ocean vessels, that's not the only traffic that comes here then.
It's not the only traffic, and our facility, we're known as sort of a niche facility in what we do. You guys know we handle a lot with wind turbine components and other big, some people may call them ugly, we find them fascinating things, but very big pieces of cargo that move through our facility. And so we're a niche port and we handle that type of freight. With containers, it's such a streamlined process and how easily they can move that we want to make sure we can do things 12 months out of the year for all of our customers. And frankly, we have a whole other level of business that we do beyond just the maritime that involves trucks and rail cars as well. And intermodal is one more service offering for that.
So Duluth Superior was not set up for intermodal in the past. What's changed and what kind of infrastructure has been needed to really make this work?
I think on our end, I think we've always been in a good position to potentially do this business. What makes it unique for us is that we have a rail partner with CN Railway that actually their main line runs right through Duluth, and you guys know that they did some double tracking of the hill in West Duluth just in the last couple of years for all that mainline container traffic and other traffic that they handle. So they are the only railroad in our market that has the ability to go West Coast, East Coast, or Gulf of Mexico, same carrier. And so it gives us the ability to provide a much more seamless service for our customer base. And so that means if a customer has one shipment they want to go to Asia, we can go west. If they want to go to South America, we can send it south or we can send it east. So it gives us lots of flexibility with that railroad.
Yeah.
I think, however, though, too, you look at the investments that have been made in the port in terms of the Tiger Grant that's gone on in the last few years, and there's a debottlenecking program that's we've done here to improve traffic flow through the facility. Those types of things help expand our capacity and our capabilities for continuing to handle not just our maritime business, but other commodities, and then be able to add on intermodal as another service offering.
Look ahead 5 years if you can, John, 5 to 10 years. What kind of growth do you expect for intermodal containerization here?
It's a really good question, Denny. We've done a lot of research on this and a lot of market analysis. We feel really that the area that our intermodal terminal can serve, if you will, from a geographic perspective, reaches out into North Dakota, comes in through northern Minnesota, really from the northern part of the Twin Cities, coming north, northern Wisconsin, UP of Michigan. That's the area that really this market can capture in terms of commodities and cargoes. What does that mean in terms of the business? Well, obviously there's opportunities for imports, but frankly our area is much heavier on the export side. So in talking to all those farmers out there that are in North Dakota and northern Minnesota, and talking to the loggers that are out there in Minnesota and Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan, the products that they make and the goods that they want to get to market, we're going to provide them with a more seamless and economical way to move their freight and hopefully open up new markets to them and make them more competitive globally. And if we're making them successful, we're doing our part down at the Port Authority with Duluth Cargo Connect to bring business to the port and economic development to the region.
Is the relationship strictly with CN, or could other rail operators take advantage of the capabilities as well?
Really good question. We are open to 4 different railroads that have access to our facility. However, the only railroad that we do intermodal with today is CN Rail. And that's based on the approach that the railroads have taken.
Any security issues related to handling cargoes that might be different from the more bulk commodities that you've been handling?
No, I
primarily
think
in the
that's
past?
a very good question, and I think it obviously it depends upon what some of those commodities are that we handle. But certainly it does. Us being a facility that's governed by Coast Guard relative to maritime, I mean, we understand that there's already requirements we have, but this brings another level of security involved. So obviously it causes us to evaluate our security plan and how we maintain the facility and make sure that it is in fact safe for shippers to bring their cargo through.
Did it take a lot of study, John, to finally determine that this could work here in the Twin Ports? If only we can get together and do it?
No, that's a good point. I think it's something that we've looked at we've studied it and analyzed it for a long time. And really what we found is we found a rail partner with CN that is extremely interested in this level of business. And they took a little bit more flexible approach with us too, in that they said, hey, we don't need a huge commitment to get this started. We're in a position to help kind of grow this business organically and ramp it up over time. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that we see. Is while we see tremendous potential for it, there wasn't an immediate, we had to have all sorts of traffic right away.
Could this spell the death knell for the boxcar?
No, I don't think it will.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, we envision that there could be some commodities that come into us by boxcar to then go into a container at our facility. And part of the reason for that, to help explain that, is once a container goes onto a train at our facility, there are some weights you can't take over the road legally, right? But once you put that container on a train and then it goes to a port and goes on a ship, and if a foreign country, for example, let's say the highways in Europe or Japan or wherever that might be, if they can handle a higher weight capacity, we can load the container to a higher weight capacity at our facility. You don't have to worry about your road requirements in the U.S., and now you effectively you save on your freight transportation because you get more product in a container.
All right. Well, it sounds fascinating, and it sounds like really exciting news for the port and for the whole region. So, Jonathan Lamb, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, John.
Telling us about it.
Appreciate it.
It's time now for the week's top business stories from Business North. A contract has been finalized under which two private firms, Guest Services, Inc. and Billy Casper Golf, will manage all Giants Ridge operations. The Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation Board will continue to own all Giants Ridge physical assets and the Biwabic property. The change comes following 18 months of studies into making Giants Ridge more efficient and more successful. The transition will be made in April, when current employees will have to reapply for their positions for a chance to remain on staff.
The region's economy is on the rebound from a mining downturn that created a 2-year unemployment spike, according to the latest Regional Economic Indicators Forum. Joblessness is at 7.4% in the 15-county area, compared with a 4.5% average in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Hotels and food service generated the second highest job growth during 2016, while only healthcare and social services created more. Mining and heavy industry lost the most jobs last year.
The majority of households in northern Wisconsin get their food from a diversity of sources and purchase food directly from farmers. That's according to the most recent Northland College Public Opinion Poll. The results show residents support local farms, sharing, producing, and gathering food. A full 89% think people should choose food produced locally whenever possible. Stores are the most common and the largest source of food, but 75% also buy directly from farmers. Other sources include hunting, fishing, gathering, and growing. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
If you have a comment about our show this week, now is the time to call. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message, or send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. Don't forget to check the WDSE website when you're looking for the latest program information, updates on station events, and other news from public TV. And Denny, if you're a lover of classical music, we have a real treat for you on Saturday night. Yeah, WDSE will be broadcasting the Duluth Superior Symphony Orchestra live Saturday at 7, and the orchestra will perform Mahler's epic Second Symphony.
Wow.
It's a journey of redemption and resurrection.
So if you can't get there, enjoy it on television. Always fun to watch.
That is, and we have the best shots, so you can see it much better from your living room. For Denny and the crew here at Almanac North, I'm Julie Zenner. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next time.